So I'm going to read sometimes some notes, you guys, just because sometimes I get off point. So I'll try not to do that too often. But I prepared this presentation with four recurring themes that gone have been through my work over all these years. And one is perception, another is perspective, identity and history, and also nostalgia and materials. And I will go a little bit more further with those as we move on. So perception. I'm really interested in having an awareness when I'm making my work, and also in soliciting awareness in people when they're looking at my work. I like work that does that for me, and through the process of making, I believe that we become more aware of the thing that we're thinking about, um, um, uh, the goal that we are going towards. And there's three artists that I admire a lot for their work with perception. One is Via Selmans, who's over here on the right side. She works on her works for months to create a actual finished. And to me, her work is about seeing deeply. Um, she um, she embodies to me the process of becoming aware of something through her sense of touch. And I have this quote by Calvin Tompkins where he says that what makes her images so alive is the consummate craftsmanship that goes into them, the hand, which knows things that the mind does not. And I really truly believe that there's more to our just normal thought process, that we can delve into something deeper when we're using some physicality. And the other artist that I really have been influenced by is James Turrell, which is over in the left corner here. He's known for his works with light. I experienced this installation back in the 80s um, called Dark Space at MoCA. I don't know if you saw that one, Pam. I mean, actually experienced it because you can't see in it. um, this piece where it's approximately like 11 feet. When you enter it, all you have is a wooden railing, and only one or two people can go in at a time. And so you have limited senses, your sense of touch, your sense of smell, and you're just being guided by this wooden railing. And I could feel the sensations of of wind coming from somewhere far away on my skin. And as you felt along this narrow, dark hallway, um, you could sense that there's something that stops your body, and it's almost like a balcony. And then there were two chairs there. So me and my friend sat down on the chairs and just sat for a moment, and lost all gravity, all kinds of space. And he basically created a place for me to feel consciousness. I felt most conscious that moment, and it just moved me. And since then, his work, even though I don't do anything in light, has motivated me to create work that has a physical presence. And Agnes Martin also on the left side here. This is her room that is in the San Francisco Museum of Art. And I just really take pleasure in Agnes Martin's sense of stillness in her work. Her work isn't about style or technique. I believe it's a form of meditation for her. So I started here showing some images from grad school. So on the how do I move? Okay, on the left side is a piece called Blind, and on the right side is a piece called Needle. So since I was young, I've always been trying to figure out what barriers I have to my consciousness and being alive. It's like what makes me see the world the way that I do, and what makes my parents behave the way that they do. And the piece on the left is about layers of blinds, like shades, that cover our awareness. And by the when this was made, this is during grad school. Um, I was only intuitively aware that my understanding about the world um, had many layers in front of it, and that I had to kind of relearn and unlearn to find out deeper of what is truly my consciousness. And on the right is a piece called Needle. Both of these are activating the physical space to me. I was trying to, make something large so that people would have to encounter it from their body. They would have to actually maybe adjust themselves to actually move and look at it and view it. And this still is something that I'm interested today, and that's why I wanted to show this slide. Here's an installation view of a corner of the installation view of my graduate school show. And again, like, this is towering. The other thing here is smaller, and then this one is like against your body. This piece is called Tissue, done years later. But again, it's playing around with scale. If I alter something's physical presence, but it's still something that is familiar to us, we can entertain it, but we might not also be conscious of it if it's small and if it's not on a pedestal. So it has to, I'm hoping it makes the viewer kind of have to be aware of themselves. I don't know if it does, but I try. What, Pam?
No, I was going to say absolutely. I mean, shifts in scale like that, it makes you aware of the space, you in the space, your sort of assumptions about objects and their relationship to you. So I see where you're going with that.
Yeah. And I think it's also just fun, I mean, just to make something in a scale shifting way is also really fun. This piece is called I, and if you like drawing or if you draw, I think you know what I mean with this piece. There's a certain kind of thinking or analyzing, I think, that can be had with drawing. So I used real graphite pencils for the center here, and then colored white colored pencils on the side to show the difference in the eyeball. And this is Sculpty on the outside. Oh no, I think it's paper clay. It's paper clay on the outside, and then I have I bought a plastic broom to make the eyelashes. And just another couple of pieces that I've done that refer to seeing. This is kind of referring to the fact that I'm a visual learner. I'm a natural visual learner, and I just kind of also wanted to have fun with the idea of seeing. I see art in, I think a lot of us visual people see art in many different places, ordinary images like shadows. And actually for me, written and spoken language is kind of slippery for me. I didn't learn Tagalog when I was a toddler in the Philippines. And then when I came to America is when I kind of got more acclimated to English. So a lot of times, Filipinos during that time period too, who would immigrate here to the United States wanted their kids to have a smooth transition to this country. And so my parents didn't teach me Tagalog. So I have this kind of like um, just challenges with language, and so I find that um, objects, things, cultural icons, cultural cues are more natural for me. Here's another one. I just found it fascinating how, I could just put my arms up like that and I see another image. So that's Batgirl. And perspective is another category that I use a lot in my artwork. Um, to me, perspective is used here in a couple of ways. One is the actual perspective and using it in terms of the format or artwork, but it's also about having an attitude towards something, a point of view, and a way of regarding something. And so two artists that inspire me to consider space are Fred Sandback on the left here, upper left. And I really admire the elegance of Sandback's work. He takes simple materials like yarn and he gives physicality to basically a non-object. This is not an object. It's just yarn. And he made me see how perception or the thingness of something can be in one's mind. And so his approach to creating work made me experience the parameters of the physical space. So I started to be even, on top of Terrell's influence, Sandback even brought me even further about space. And then of course also Sol LeWitt. I admire his work, especially his drawing installations. He made me start to think about how 2 and 3 dimensions can be there simultaneously. And his work introduced me to seeing how the environmental space can be created from a single flat surface. I wanted you to see how Sandback's work is made here with the string. So you can see in this image here, this is just string and it's just taut. And when I experienced that at the Dia Center at Beacon in New York, it was just like, everybody's like moving around these things when you can actually just stick your hand through them, but they occupy space. It's wonderful. So I wanted to start with when I first started doing that myself, is when I created this drawing pink box. I found it interesting that I could see this flattened pink box, but through this pink box, it gave me enough information that I can construct the folded box in my mind. And I just loved that. I was just like, wow, that's all I needed. And so there, it was like this virtual 3 dimensions. And I just started just loving to play with that and this 2D, 3D thing. So here's this piece called Peak. It's I sometimes do drawings to just help me kind of think through things. So Peak on the left side and left side, right side on the right side. And the ruled line paper, it started this is in 2010, started to become part of my visual language. I started to explore miseducation, invisibility, and colonial mentality through the piece of paper. Well, here's some studio work in progress back in 2014. So on the left side is called Face Down. So it's flat, but has the appearance of being 3-dimensional. And then on the right side, I was doing these drawings that were flat. And then I found myself like kind of playing with it in my studio, and I accidentally found that I was playing with space in ways that I've never done before. And then on the right side, as a result of that, I started to really like kind of construct like isometric perspective, what would happen with that if I did that to a subject matter. And these kinds of like plays with perspective to me are my way of trying to deconstruct point of view. And I wanted to show that there's no superior point of view. And as a teacher, I'm teaching perspective, but I'm also kind of trying to like rethink it for myself, what these rules are, what these rules mean. A one-point perspective means one singular view. And so playing with stuff, I started to do this thing where I stumbled upon this, on the left side here, this is just a box in my studio and also a real brick. On the right side is an isometric view of a box that's in 3D, and an isometric view of a brick that I made in 3D. So there's no way to photograph this so that you can see actually what it is. You'll get to see it in the next slide, but it fascinates me how like I would have this thing in my studio and I'd go, wait a minute, what's happening to my mind? And so I'm also making, I'm hoping anyway that the viewer is also kind of altering or getting altered by their sense of perspective and how they view the world. Um, so here's the
I have to say, I loved your label, like real. That's all that's needed to be said. Anyway, go ahead.
No, that's good, Pam, because see, this is a real table. And then these are my sculptures that I added to it, my objects that I added to it. So you can see what happens here a little bit more. So this box is an isometric perspective and the book is an isometric perspective in terms of a drawing, but it's an actually 3D thing. And so I saw a lot of people kind of like, they'd go like, what? You know, they did the double take. And it, in a way, it's playful here, but there's other things that I'm thinking about that are that I'm trying to reach when I'm thinking about perspective. I get more. I guess I get a less more poetic later on. You'll see. Okay. So this piece is called. Oh, I just wanted to say this. I want to keep going to this work. It just hasn't been something I've had time to do, but I really am really interested in going back to playing with this kind of space. And then, you know, if you remember Fred Sandback, I did want to try activating the space with yarn. This piece is called Outside. It was for an exhibition called Inside the White Cube. And I thought that title was really exclusive. So exclusive. So I just thought that I'd create this piece called Outside. And it's you know, kind of this virtual outside space to come inside to the space. Are we doing okay with time?
Oh, I think so. I think so. I find that really interesting, knowing that you're teaching drawing, and I, you know, I've taught drawing. Well, I'm teaching drawing myself, and as a creator, you know, and then you're also so interested in this phenomenology. But now you're teaching these systems for perspective, acquiring knowledge, acquiring language, creating language, and how, you know, very often how to bring your, you know, do you find that now that, did you start working on these sort of really foregrounding perspective and things like that before you started teaching drawing, or was it that, you know, you reflected so much on them while teaching drawing that it sparked something?
Yes, I do believe that teaching drawing made me think about what am I teaching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think and see around the edges of those systems, and I think that might be part of the double take that people are doing. Like it's really, you know, it's fun. It's like, whoa, what am I looking at here? But at the same time, you realize how we as we move through space, and, you know, describe it to ourselves, and all of the assumptions that we make, and then what our position within culture, world, you know, identity, that is another set of presumptions that, you know, we just don't necessarily see around the edges of, if you're white anyway, or if you're a dominant culture in a situation. So it's interesting.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, a number of us then maybe we just try to like it's not just because you're white. I think it's like we all have to be decolonized in a way to recognize that, you know, we're all doing it.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. And so this is just an image I wanted to show before I showed the piece Canyon. I had an opportunity to be artist in residence at the Joshua Tree Highlands Artist Residency in 2016. And while I was there, I was really struck by the contrast between the landscape and then this this huge big box superstore in Joshua Tree, which is this Walmart. And I've never been to a Walmart superstore in my life. But when I was in Joshua Tree, it's like I went there. I'm just so curious. It's like a football field, and there's just rows and rows of tall aisles of just products. And so I created this piece Canyon because of that just these aisles of products and consumption. And I kind of thought about, again, perspective. And I'm also kind of thinking about other things that relate to the box. Filipinos have this tradition of the balikbayan box, where they would send goods and candy bars and special things to people back home. And when I first immigrated here, we did that too. I don't participate in that anymore because I don't have anybody back in the Philippines to send to, but it's still an ongoing thing. So there's like warehouses of these balikbayan boxes too that are being sent to the Philippines. And so I have these other ideas about boxes. So I just went and found these boxes all over Joshua Tree stores and created this piece. And then I would like to talk about also identity history and its personal narrative, and how I use objects and things to deal with my own personal narrative. I saw this show in it's a Newport Art Museum back in the 80s. And I believe it was, who was that curator?
Karen Moss, maybe? Or
It was called Objectives. No, he used to work at MoCA. Do you remember him?
I don't remember.
Oh gosh. Oh well, I'm sorry. Well, I came across this Robert Gober artwork at this show Objectives. It made such an impact on me. When I saw this piece on the right side, it's called Untitled Leg. What happened to me, it showed a manifestation of both surrealism and psychology in real space. And I loved surrealism as a young a student of art. And when I saw this, it just like, it was like a revelation to me. I was making paintings at the time, and I felt that I was really limited by creating images of what I wanted to say. And I wanted my work to be in direct relationship with the viewer, so that there wasn't any distance between the viewer and something that they were engaging with. So I wanted them to be in the physical space with the story. And this showed me that it was possible to create not narrative with an object. And Gober is also interested with identity, gender, and social structures. So I just kind of like, I kind of really love him. And I have to be careful because sometimes I do something and it's like, I look later and I see that, oh my God, Gober did that already. And it's like, but he's just, I just really love his work. And so I created, I think Pam knows this work, Punching Bag in 1995. And it's a piece that I created that, in a way, it honors my grandmother, my Lola. Lola is grandmother in Tagalog, which is a Filipino dialect. And my grandmother was a dressmaker in the Philippines. She made custom clothes, and she had several employees in Manila. And Filipino women just make me proud. Compared to other parts of Southeast Asia, women in the Philippines society, they have enjoyed a much greater sense of equality. In fact, like when we came here, my mom was working as well as being a homemaker at the same time. Yeah, I just never thought that she wasn't unequal to my father. She was a really strong woman. My grandmother was. All my all the women in my family are strong. So this piece is actually modeled after a tomato pincushion. Um, so it's fabric, and it's like making a pincushion twice its size, and taking a punching bag and making it half its size. So I made this pincushion in the shape of a punching bag, and then I covered the whole thing in pins.
I have to say, because I did get to see that work. What didn't that, wasn't that that was the cover of our catalog, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I did get to see that work in person. I mean, the scale was so incredible. It had such an incredible presence, because those pins, you can't help but think about actually punching that, like what would happen. And it's just such a powerful sort of presence as an object. And then the story related, because I mean, we also had tomato pincushion, and so really just taking on so many kinds of stories in that one piece, and your desire to sort of have a visceral or bodily kind of interaction with the audience, making them move around the work or making the whole room feel like it shifts. That definitely, with that piece, I feel like there was that sort of moment when
Oh,
you first.
good. I'm glad. This is also the punching bag piece was at the first shown at the Pacific Asia Museum. It was known as that back then, and also this piece, which is called Brace, and this is also where I was attempting to create a piece that had story residing in the artwork. I was diagnosed with scoliosis when I was a young kid. And I also used to work at a donut shop. So there's just like some layering in there. And then these two pieces here, one's called Bland and the other one is called Brown, is my first attempt at kind of encountering ideas around colorism. Um, there's a kind of maybe some people are familiar with this kind of shame about one's skin color, and there's actual hierarchy of Philippines during the Spanish colonization that was based on nationality, place of birth, ethnicity, and racial mixing. But the chart also is closely aligning with color, and and so there's this kind of like, on the left side, this is made of white paper towels. On the right side are different ideas surrounded by the word of brown. And then years later, I was reading the book, the memoir by Peter Jamaro called Growing Up Brown. And also in response to the my feelings of marginalization after the 2016 election, I kind of started to identify again with not feeling American. And so I thought that I would go back to that previous piece that I did with the crayons and make another crayon, but this time a crayon that was physically my size. And I placed on the label American um, on the left side. And on the right side, I did another version of the crayon, and it's called Kayumangi. And Kayumangi refers to brown in Tagalog. It's hard to really translate the entire meaning of Kayumangi because it's kind of untranslatable in English. But it's like brown love or Filipino pride. So I started to, take kind of ownership of my color.
And those crayons are 4'11", right? And the
Right.
first ones you show were at like crayon size. So that scale shift.
Yeah. In 2006, I started a series of trunk drawings, And these are drawn and observed from my point of view. So they're in relation to my height and perspective. So on the left side is a tree that's in my mom's house. And then on the right side is my husband. And then just jumping really fast, the reason why I jumped to this is because I did another series of trunk drawings, but the reason why I even entertained the idea of doing trunk drawings again is that in 2017, I went to a sabbatical to actually study Japanese ink painting. And that led me to go visit the San Francisco Asian Museum exhibition on ink painting, but I also went there to see the historic exhibition that was called Philippine Art, Collecting Memories. And it was one of the first exhibitions of its kind in the United States. It was artwork from the Philippine art from pre-colonial period to the present. And I was so affected by that exhibit for a number of reasons. One is that it was so small. And that always happens. It's like, and it occupied just 2 small rooms, and it made me long for more. I just was like, I want to see more. I want to know more. And you have to remember, I'm like from a generation that did not have Philippine American Studies or Asian American Studies courses while I was going to school. So we just didn't, if you needed to find out something about your culture, you had to seek it out. And so, and it's not really that's not surprising when you think that 2017, this is the first time they had a show like this in the United States. So anyway, I started to learn about indigenous Philippine culture, like Batok, which is Kalinga tattoo art, the textile work of the Philippines, and also just history, like the Philippine American War. And I started playing around with, after reading Amoris's book, seeing these patterns. And I don't have an image of this sketch, but I just briefly, I went to Cincinnati and I encountered these trees that were kind of, they had 2 basic branches, and it looked like lungs to me. And so when I started to approach the drawing on the left, I was thinking that I was going to be creating lungs for the body. But everything led me to see that I was actually thinking about how roots are similar to tattoo line. And so this was just like, this just evolved for me, this drawing on the left. And so I knew I needed to make my trunk. And then I also made a tree trunk that was a palm tree trunk instead of the trunk that was at my mom's house. And these are all, when they're shown, they're always exhibited at my perspective. And this is also exhibited at my perspective. This is called study. And this kind of goes back to you, Pam, when we're talking about teaching. And I was thinking about how I'm studying my identity, studying my history, finding out about it. And on the right side is study 2. I reinstalled the piece that was done in 2018 for a show at ACMA in 2020. And this is just a drawing of the work in progress. So the image is, first it's the wall. This is a temporary piece. So it's painted on the wall, green chalkboard paint. And then I go in and I draw it. And then I place wood on the edge so that it looks like a chalkboard. It's like half the size of a traditional chalkboard. You can see it here on the left side, and this piece is called Ism. So ism is like referring to colonialism, imperialism, communism, any kind of ism, some kind of agenda that is placed upon us And it's also blank because I'm talking about cultural amnesia, and I'm also talking about historical amnesia. Um, I don't know if you see these ripples here. These ripples are basically influenced by that drawing peak that I did years ago. It's like when I was putting this together and I remembered, oh my God, that's like a wave.
Right. Also, the Via Salmon's reference from earlier too, a little bit, right? The waves a bit.
Waves, and also the chalkboard for sure. The chalkboard. She does chalkboards and she also does, yeah, water. Um, a benevolent assimilation. So there's this basically an agenda that the McKinley administration had called Benevolent Assimilation Proclamation. And it was a way to um, um, promote US political policy to the Filipino people. And so I made another large 8.5 by 11 foot piece of paper. So this is just paper, and but I buy rolls of paper, and then I draw the lines with colored pencil. And then after I make the paper, I cut the holes out and stuff. And then after that, that's my little Agnes Martin in a way, but in this big scale. And then afterwards, I wrote benevolent assimilation over and over and over again. And then I crumpled it up, and so this is a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. But then it's like I physically crumpled it up, and it's to make this piece called Tossed.
Wow.
This is just some images. Like on the right side is a concept sketch. I have an idea of utilizing the Banaue rice terraces in a work. And so I was drawing it, and as I was drawing it, I was kind of thinking about trade. I was thinking about using boxes again in an artwork, and just like, this is like a warehouse of consumer goods here. And just thinking about that exchange. I mean, there's been exchange even before capitalism. There's just always been exchange in the Philippines because of where we're located. There's this cross-cultural current. And so I wanted to kind of play around with that idea of commerce, balikbayan boxes, culture. And so all of these boxes are made of different products from different countries, lots of different countries in Asia. I buy these products here in the United States. And I tried to kind of emulate a little bit the rice terraces. So this piece is called Terrace. And then the last theme that kind of comes into my work, into my work for all these years has been nostalgia and materials. I put this image of Sleeper because I don't know about you, but when I saw that when I was a kid, it was just like, it was hilarious. Plus, it just made such an impact on me. I don't know if this is the reason why I like making big things, but I really thought it was hilarious. And I still think back about how I enjoyed that. And then, I think some of the cultural cues are food, right? So if you come to a different country, when you immigrate, then you have like longings for things that you've had before or have connections to. And then also my parents worked for the Los Angeles Times, so I have a connection and a memory of the newspaper. So I appropriate a lot, these objects, these ordinary objects, they're accessible, and I feel that they inherently have associations to culture, memory, history, and story. And in this piece, I'm kind of grappling with faith. I was raised Catholic, so I'm grappling with that idea. This piece is called Wall Vitruvian, And so I told you my parents worked at the LA Times. On the right side are stacks of newspapers, but there's nothing on them. They're just plain. Um, and then I bought paper from the LA Times blank, and then tied them up. And then on the left side are bricks of newspaper. And Vitruvian is like in relation to Michael Da Vinci's Vitruvian image. So this is like my height, or occupies my sense of physical space. And then, I like to also think about home. And in this work, this is called Souvenir. And this is my image of my parents' home. And I was leaving, I was moving on. And so it was almost like having like a souvenir from that place that I used to live, like when you're traveling. These two pieces are also thinking about home as the center. And the left side is also influenced by Buckminster Fuller. It's called House Fullerene, referencing the particle. There's a charcoal particle, and then on the right side is global, and it's made out of 32 Aloha shirts. And the left side is also appropriating the California bungalow with the siding, the wood siding. This piece is going back to kind of my interest in pop art, and I make a lot of like towers and stacks. And this piece is called I Can Food. It's made with spray paint and stenciling. And for me, I'm thinking about food as a cultural connection and a cultural marker. It's kind of a cry out for dignity, and in terms of like people that are impoverished or oppressed or marginalized. I was making this work when I was around downtown a lot of homeless people around there. And I wanted to kind of show how I started to work with the pink box. This piece on the right is called Stupa. And I don't have the year here. I think it's 2006. And then on the left side is an actual stack of boxes at the Wangkok Chinese restaurant in Chinatown, Los Angeles. These are white boxes, but I remember them being pink when I was growing up. And then I went to Japan, and again revisited the architecture of a stupa, or and so I created this piece on the right called Storage. So this pink box has connections to me for the Chinese bakery, and how the familiarity I have with those pastries when I was growing up. They were more accessible and available than Filipino pastries, and so I had had a longing for them. And then years later, I worked at a donut shop, so then the pink box just has these kind of layers for me. And I know that it's getting more identified with donuts, but for me, it's more about the Chinese pastry. This piece is called Isla. And then here's the Shopaoban. And then on the right, the box that I remember and recall from the Chinese bakery, where it would go into a machine and it would get tied with a string. This piece is called Raft. I changed and appropriated some of the imagery from the original Calrose rice. The Calrose rice is called Botan rice. And I'm referring a little bit to Baton, as in the Baton march. And also I'm also referring to Raft as in the Raft of Medusa, the painting. So they're arranged that way, like the raft of Medusa. Here's just a poking fun at the political climate, but again, using and appropriating something from childhood. And lunch, I like to talk about lunch. So there's this really great quote by Anne Lamott, the writer. And so the significance of school lunch, she writes, your sandwich was the centerpiece and there were strict guidelines. Here is the main thing I know about public school lunches. It only looked like a bunch of kids eating lunch. It was really about opening our insides in front of everyone. Just like writing is, it is a precursor to the showers in 7th and 8th grade gym, where everyone could see your everything or your lack of everything and smell the inside of, and the inside smells of your body. And the whole time you just knew you were going to catch something. The contents of your lunch said whether whether or not you and your family were okay. Some bag lunches, like some people, were okay and some weren't. There was a code, a right and acceptable way. It was that simple. And so, I had this hot dog lunch when I was a kid, and it was just like embarrassing. These two little hot dogs were peeking out, and it was like, no, this is not how to make a sandwich, Mom. It's like, and I later revisit lunch with this piece called Sun. Made basically a paper lunch sack, the height of my husband. Okay, and now I just want to kind of show the installation stuff. When I make a project, if I'm being asked to create a work for a big space, and I make a model, and I make everything to scale so that I can kind of see the space, because space, as I've said, is kind of really important to me. So, and then this is the first exhibition model for the navigating technique show that was at ACMA in 2020. And it changed a lot, but I was able to kind of move things. And then here's the show. So this is the entrance view. You might recognize some of the works here. So the works are coming from the show that, a combination of the show that I did called Red, White, and Brown at the Hudson Jones Gallery in Cincinnati. The curator for this show was Ricardo Reyes, and he thought that we could use works from that show and then also works from my current body of work. So you can recognize some of these works here. These are just close-ups of the drawings that are on the wall. And I do a lot of drawings sometimes to investigate how I would do a sculpture, or sometimes I'll do a drawing and I'll think, oh, that needs to be a sculpture. Sometimes it just needs to stay as a drawing. And just to say a little thing about kapwa. So kapwa is a term, an indigenous value system in the Philippines. And it's a concept of community or sharing, of shared being or fellow being. And, I'm also appropriating or referencing Andy Warhol and Coca-Cola. This is the other side of the gallery, the corner. And then this installation is called Territorial Pissings. The title comes from a song title. And it's an installation that was originally created for the exhibition called Another Space in Eagle Rock. That exhibition was also created in October during Filipino American History Month. And it was all Filipinx artists. And I was asked to think about place. And and I started to feel that I could really resonate on that idea of place and how I exist in it as a Filipino American, working with other Filipino Americans. So I thought about how when I was thinking about space, I found that I was unraveling issues of marginalization and microaggressions in my own communities, and also felt that there was a culture of silencing that I felt, and I was also doing to myself. And so I created this piece called Territorial Pissings, and the elements are the books that are made out of wood, and chairs that are depicted and emulated from the Roosevelt Room in the White House, and they're of 1/8 scale, and they're made out of bronze. A rat hole and molding on the wall, and the drawing of a rat inside, done with a graphite pencil, and a small painting called Theodore, that refers to the painting that is in the Roosevelt Room, that's showcased above the fireplace in the White House, and a wallpaper called If These Walls Could Talk. I designed the wallpaper using images. I'll show you the book next. So the images are from a book called The Forbidden Book. And let me see if I could get the whole title. The Forbidden Book, The Philippine-American War in Political Cartoons, that was published in 2004. And then also from the dollar bill. So I was also utilizing the filigrees and the decorative elements of the dollar bill. And so here's the book on the left, on the right, and some of the images, just one image from the book that I appropriated. So these images are, derogatory images a lot of times of Filipinos, and also other racial groups that America has colonized. And there are also infantilized images of Filipinos. So I used them to create this wallpaper. And oh yeah, this is just as a detail of the wallpaper here. And just recently, that installation was revisited again at a show that just ended this past weekend, called Invisible, Hypervisible, at the Red Line Contemporary Art Center in Denver. So here's the wallpaper in the back there. And here it is again. And they did some programming with it, which was really cool. So this dancer was created a dance and reacted to the wallpaper in a live setting. And the last slide, I know I kind of went really fast there because I just don't know how much time I have, but this last slide I want to end it is called 1587. So in 1587, the year refers to the first documented landing of indigenous Filipinos in North America. And I created this drawing during Asian Pacific Islander Month to show the significance of how long Filipinos have been in America. And it's done on this yellow ruled line paper, kind of conveying data or making data, and kind of as a log of the countless numbers of immigrants from Asian countries that have arrived since, and also the color yellow, a notion of color. So happy Filipino American History Month.
Wow, that was so incredible. So many wonderful things to see. And yay. We do have a couple of questions in the chat. I'm going to jump to them really quick in case people have to go to their next
Okay.
class or whatever. But I'll start, let's see. Raven has a question. Says, would you say playing with the size of ordinary things says something about the meaning of the ordinary things, like a bag. Lunch for one's son might be a small package, but it's a big thing to a child, or from a parent to a child, or how you create really small drawings or pieces on sheets of paper. But just because they're made small doesn't mean they don't mean something, or they're not worth paying attention to. So thinking about how it is that you're shifting scale.
Um, who asked that question?
That was Raven.
Okay, thanks, Raven, for that question. I think you're really onto something there, Raven. I do believe that I do the things that you have said. Sometimes I'm approaching it really to kind of create a physicality so that you can recognize the the object again, because when it's in its regular scale, we kind of just dismiss it. So if it's changed in scale, we might pay attention. But I think that it also does. My dog is calling me. Oh my God. Oh, sorry, guys. Um, but I do think that it does also um, can add to the meaning when it's shifted, definitely. Thank you.
That's great. Another question from Tatiana was, I'm curious what the significance of paper products are to other than the boxes, because you do have, a lot of paper. I am always struck by the modesty of the materials that you use. And you do address that throughout your talk, how you make your choices, but it is, striking. What about paper products? Tell us more about that.
Um, I think that probably there's some of it is practical. You know, when you're in grad school, you don't have a lot of money, and you're going to have to try to create things on your own. Like I'd want to make something, and it's like, how do I make that? I also like I like to be able to control it. So it's like I want to. I know I can do something with my hands, but and so if I can make it with my hands, I have some control over it. And modesty is a part of it. You know, there's just everything has to be. I think at the time when I was going to school, everything looked so slick. Everything seemed like it wasn't approachable. And I really wanted to just like kind of not like do that too. It's like,
Mm.
you know, I don't want to just be that as well. And so I do think that there's a warmth to that to paper and those mediums, but also just the mere accessibility of it is something that I would, um, that I just want. Um, I want to have, I guess, I'm, I'm, I'm,
Like foregrounded. And I mean, there is, because like when you reuse the boxes and things, I mean, you could have like screen print your own cardboard, right? I could imagine an artist that would do that, collect logos or something, and then, from certain brands or certain things, and then print their own boxes. Or, Andy Warhol's boxes were actually in wood, right? That were
Right.
printed. But by using these materials that have actually functioned and had a life, like they've actually moved, some of these boxes, right? They've been shipped from one place to another,
Right.
unpacked by workers, now discarded, but still useful, and now taken by you. And their significance is once again, like, reformatted again. And so we get to adjust to that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's like recasting them
Yeah.
in the original.
And
Um,
but the other part is like all the brand new paper that you rule yourself, like, in this very deliberate way that's either blank, or references a kind of disciplining that happens in education or had, so that's interesting too, to make the page yourself, to make a giant page, you
yeah,
know, or a shrinky dink, page.
yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. And then Sophia is wondering too about, I think it was Sophia. Yes, about, do you have a favorite piece?
Do I
And
have a
why might that be if you do?
you know, I don't know. I think the punching bag is a pretty favorite piece of mine. Yeah.
Do you look at that and go, I made that? Like, do you ever have that experience where you're just like, oh, wow. It does have a power, like something happens, like, y- y- when something's really finished, sometimes it's almost like,
Oh yeah.
how did it get there?
Well, that
It's like,
happened with the brick and box thing. Like I was just like blown away by what happened.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so exciting. Um, oh, here's Sophia follows up with another. I think it's the same Sophia, but this is a Sophia Coleman. I love your connection to your childhood with your art, specifically your use of pink pastry boxes, turning such an ordinary thing into an incredible art piece. I don't think I'll see pink pastry boxes the same after seeing your artwork, so it's more of a comment.
Oh, thanks, Sophia. I'm kind of curious what Sophia's favorite piece is. If she has one,
Yeah, put your favorites in the chat, you guys. I have to say, my husband's from Hawaii. And so, like, when I see your bags of rice, like, I know that there are certain rice and certain things that are just the right ones because of the family history, the food associations. And I know, like, my family is from the south of the US. So, my mom, picked cotton. She was a sharecropper. So we also had hot dog sandwiches and potted meats. And it's true. It was like, what is that? The weirdest stuff. Spam. Like that's something my husband and I, very different cultures, but
yeah.
it's something that we share as from our childhood. But there's such power. I mean, it's fun and it's kind of funny and it's pop cultural, but it's also so deep. Like, and I
Yeah.
feel like the way your work takes these things and like, you know, elaborately renders it or makes it magnificently the biggest hot dog sandwich you've ever seen. It gives the power of those feelings that are, that you might not speak, that you just kind of live as a person with your cultural history, whatever pieces of that you have.
Yeah.
It's really something to me. It really kind of, it gets me. Even when there are things that I don't necessarily relate to, like in a personal way, I feel there's this strength. I feel the energy of them somehow. Sounds kind of
Oh,
woo woo, but
I hope so.
it's
I think that that's what I gather from Via Salmons, she's making these images, and because of what she puts into the investigation of creating those images, you feel her. I recall going to see Da Vinci at the Met. I mean, this is a sketchbook of Da Vinci's drawings, and I could still feel him in that drawing. What it's
yeah.
so I just there's a truth to that.
I know I love that about drawing. And when I talk to students about drawing and that sort of leaving the initial marks, like that history sort of builds, rather than sort of, I mean, there's always room for a very clean drawing, but leave those adjustments, leave those construction lines sometimes, but that kind of investment of time and energy does live in the drawing. And you can go to the Getty drawing gallery, which I recommend because they always have drawings up, and they're tiny, because paper and all, the conventions of the day. A lot of drawings now, we make these big ones, but they're really tiny, so they'll have magnifying glasses, that you can then look at the drawing, these tiny figures, and you can still connect to that person. Like I can feel it. I've had the experience of making that drawing, or I know what that mark feels like, or I felt that pose in my own body. And so maybe the garments are different or the hairstyles are different, but the sort of embodiment of that person is something that I can recognize. Even if I don't relate it to my own life, I recognize it as being inside of a person, being a self inside of a person. And drawing is such a physical activity. It's so related to breath, everything, I think.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's see. I think there's more comments. I think you can look at the chat too if you want. Like you need one more thing to be doing, right, Mary Rose? But Marquise says, was there ever a time where you may have been hesitant or afraid of backlash to represent your culture through art? If so, how did you push through that?
Oh yeah, that's a really great question, Marquise. Actually, when I was going to graduate school, when I first started in graduate school, I was working with images. When I got into the school, I was actually painting images of my family, and this was pre multiculturalism. And I actually, when multiculturalism came about, I was afraid of being pigeonholed. So I actually then started not using my self image or people in my family in my artwork, and started to use the object more. And what's the other part of his question, Pam?
How did you push through, like concerns about that, maybe?
Well, it's just taken me a long time, Marquise, because I'm, as you can see, I haven't had the figure in my work in a really long time until more recently. And so now I am very interested in putting my figure, brown people, in my artwork.
That's fascinating, because and your images were fantastic, and I hope if any of you here today get a chance to see Mary Rose's work in life, maybe we could even bring some to our gallery at some point. But I've had the opportunity to walk through it over the years, here and there. I didn't get to see the OPMA show, but it is so much because of your scale shifts, because of the point of view and perspective. I mean, you become the whole room. You are so aware of your body, one's body, and the artist or the maker's perspective when you're looking at your work, that although images of bodies have not been a big part of your work until maybe recently. I mean, I didn't see your really early work, but it's in some ways it's all about particular looking at how people see and are and be. So the image of the body is gone, but the physicality of the body is kind of there, and how you interact with the works, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's challenging to do images of the body because of context, and how the image of the body is uh, addressed in a context, particularly if your image isn't really visible. So still,
Right.
there's these Asian Americans that are calling out and saying, we're not on television, we're not on, there's uh Latinx people saying, where are we, we're not represented. So if then when you do represent it, it's like, um there's a danger, I think, of being, as a person of color, being called as a person of a Filipino American artist and not an artist, or and so yeah, it is something that I think, maybe not as much that you have to contend with now, because there people are trying harder, institutions are trying harder, but yeah, I think that I think individually we all have to like grapple with it, whether or not we want to go there.
Mhm. Right. Fascinating. I'm looking. Oh, hi, Carolyn. Carolyn Castano is here.
Yeah, hi,
Was
Carolyn.
here. She says, um, oh, she mentions a comment. There's so much about ethnicity and class in the school lunch. It's like a kid's first feelings of vulnerability and difference.
Mm-hmm.
And lots of votes for different works that are people's favorites too. Uh, let's see here. Thank yous. All right. I hope that we hit the questions that were in the chat. Um, what is it? It was brought up a little bit in a question that you just answered, but thinking about your family, do you have other artists in your family? I mean, was it when you decided to pursue art, was that just like something to do in your family, or was there ever like concern about that? Because I hear that a lot from our students. I know it was a concern in my household.
Yeah, it was a concern of my parents. They wanted me to do something a little more practical. They said, "How about architecture? You have an uncle that was an architect." But I also had an uncle that went to art school in the Philippines. He ended up being more of a design, kind of graphic design artist. But he encouraged me, and he also encouraged my mother and father to see that I maybe had some possibilities to be an artist.
Mhm.
Yeah. My teachers encouraged me too. That was helpful.
Always, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. This was a wonderful presentation, and I feel like you really were so generous in all that you shared with us about your work, and with the images of your work as well. And I so appreciate you coming, at least through Zoom, to College of the Canyons, and sharing with us. So thanks, and thank you everybody who came today to our Zoom talk. There's been a lot of hard things about having our campus more remote, although many of us are back on campus now. But one of the best things has been this opportunity to bring artists like you, who we may not have an opportunity to run across uh, directly because of our location, that you can just zoom in and share so much with us. I know it makes a big difference to our community, and I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for everyone that came here. Thank you for inviting me, Pam, and your colleagues at College of the Canyons. I really, it's an honor that you would ask me to do this.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks so much. Have a great afternoon, and I will look forward to sharing more art with you as the semester continues. Um, bye. Okay. Let's see. So I've saved the chat. So if anybody put in there that I will send the extra credit information to your teachers as flex credit as well. Thanks, Maryrose.
Thank you. Thanks.
That was so great.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.